All right, here we go for the Bober and Hanley Pro Football Podcast here on our YouTube channel on AM 590 ESPN Omaha. The former pro, Chris Bober, and I am Nick Handley, and we are getting into some of the Week 5 headlines, actually Week 6 headlines as we enter Week 6. We got Thursday Night Football. We've got another doubleheader on Monday Night Football, at least as of now. Who knows? That could change, too. We could get more on Monday. We could get another Tuesday game. It's kind of a wild schedule, and Chris, the thing that we're noticing, and as I'm just looking right now of the news of the Atlanta Falcons, sources are saying they have 4 positive tests. Their facilities have been closed right now. This is the year of flexibility for the NFL, and I think right now we're seeing teams having to do that. I think when we first saw the Steelers have to kind of put up with what was going on with the Titans. I know there was a lot of disgruntled players out of the Pittsburgh camp, but now I think you're hearing less of that because I think teams understand right now, hey, this is something that we knew could happen. Now it's actually happening, and you've got to be flexible. And I think that's just going to be the common theme throughout the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our initial thoughts on a lot of this was that some of this is unfair, but it's really kind of luck of the draw, honestly. Tennessee kind of set aside because they maybe went outside the boundaries a little bit.
Yeah.
But what I will give credit to is these NFL teams have done such a great job of like their contact tracing. They spent a lot of money on that. And in doing that, they've really minimized, the shutting down of the entire team, right? So you get a couple of players test positive. While they're at the facilities, they're generally required to wear contact tracing. So as long as they can prove that they haven't been within so many people for so long, you can really isolate those guys. You're starting to see more individual cases of guys that can't play rather than team cases. Like, for example, the Chiefs put Anthony COVID list because he had some sort of contact. Well, I think they're going to be able to basically just not have him for a period of time, which doesn't help, but it's better than canceling games or moving to another game. So they've done a pretty good job with this. They really have handled it. I got to give them credit for it. They're also coming out with new and more stringent rules to keep people within the boundaries. So look for that to increase. But they've changed a whole bunch of games, and I don't know where this goes, but they're doing the best they can to get games played.
And speaking of the COVID situation in the NFL, the good news is we know Cam Newton, that was really the big name that first tested positive. He had to miss, and then we know how that kind of threw their schedule in an upheaval. The Chiefs were sort of impacted by that as well. Now it sounds like Cam Newton he's back at practice. He's off the COVID list. Stephon Gilmore for the Patriots, he might be back as well. So you are seeing guys, and we never really heard of any of these players having significant symptoms. And I think when talking about the impact of players testing positive, we immediately go, and it's just because it's where our mind takes us, we immediately go to the schedule. We immediately go to, oh my gosh, they're not going to be able to play. How's that going to impact this division? How's it going to impact this conference? And I think we forget that, well, we first of all hope that guys like Cam Newton, Stephon Gilmore, other people that we know that have tested positive, you hope that they're healthy. You hope that they're not getting hit with symptoms. You're hoping that, God forbid, they don't have to be hospitalized. So all of those things are always, I think, a given when we do talk about this. But the good news is, so far with that, it sounds like a lot of these guys that have tested positive really have not had any symptoms at all. And if they have, they've been very mild. So I guess if there is a silver lining just from the health standpoint, that would be one.
Yeah, and you got to remember, I was there at one point in my life. I'm probably not there now, but these guys are ultra healthy, competitive, top of the world athletes. You know what I mean? And a lot of the guys who had pre-existing conditions are the ones who opted out. And that's why this happened. Because, if you're someone who has a condition that maybe is susceptible to this disease and you put yourself in harm's way, that wouldn't have been very good. So a lot of guys who had that kind of stuff, they're not even playing this year. And knock on wood, these guys are staying healthy. They are young, vibrant men who could withstand this virus for the most part. So yeah, that's great news. And thank goodness we aren't talking about their long-term health or really affecting them more than the games.
Yeah. They're between the workout regimen and, pumping yourself full of vitamins. It's probably, as good as you can do right now until we,
World-class doctors, honestly. I mean,
right.
believe me, they give the physicals that you can't even imagine at the NFL level. And your health is how you produce for the teams, and they are very much on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Le'Veon Bell is now on the market, and I gotta be honest. I thought we might know something as of yesterday when he did become officially a free agent on the open market. He was released, of course, by the New York Jets. They were trying to get any type of a trade for him, and they were not getting anything for Le'Veon Bell. So now what we know is Le'Veon Bell could very well help a team right now, and it's interesting. Two teams that we talk about just because we're fans of. You played for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm a huge Chicago Bears fan. According to Bill Barnwell of ESPN, Le'Veon Bell is linked to the Bears and the Kansas City Chiefs. Not necessarily those teams are reportedly showing interest, but as far as the fit for teams that are running back needy because of either an injury or just because of the way that they can use that running back. You've got Bill Barnwell listing the Chicago Bears at number 1 and the Kansas City Chiefs at number 2. So, Chris, let me ask you just from the Chiefs side of things. You do have a very good rookie running back, but he's still a rookie. There's not as much depth. You had a running back opt out earlier in the year before everything got rolling. So, could you use a body like that, especially given Le'Veon Bell's ability to be a very good receiver out of the backfield as well as a good running back?
Well, I think more than that, I think that's like looking at it as it translates on paper, right? And they're saying because of these factors, this guy's would fit here. The thing they're not taking into account, and I think that's where this article falls short, is they're not taking into account the team's culture,
Yep.
right? Like last year, the Chiefs brought in LaShawn McCoy, but LaShawn McCoy was a guy who had very good connections with Andy Reid. He fit what they wanted. He came in and he contributed at certain points of that game, but wasn't even active for the Super Bowl. But he got a ring because he had a part, and he played his part. He did not make a – Le'Veon Bell, quite honestly, I think it's going to be hard for a team to pick him up, right? Like, how bad are the Jets when they were the only ones who wanted to sign him? And that was a couple of years ago. He's put himself in a position where I think, he comes with a lot of baggage, and his talent aside, it's a big risk. It's a big risk to your team's culture. And I think if you're going to look to sign him, I just can't see a contending team with the culture they have wanting to bring in a Le'Veon Bell. I think it's probably more likely maybe one of these teams who are down and out wants to kind of have another talented person on their roster,
Yeah.
or try to pick something up before they fire their coach or have already fired their coach. The problem is that's not matching up with what Bell wants, but I don't think he's going to have many choices, honestly. I mean, I guarantee Andy Reid has shut that book already. It's just too much. He can do more damage than good at a lot of places. And he's shown that just with his attitude, with his, quite honestly, he hasn't produced, right? So you remember this Le'Veon Bell when he was with the Steelers, but that's been years ago now. So I think it's going to be a tough marker for him. He's already getting paid this year because he's guaranteed that salary. So, I mean, I would not be surprised if he doesn't play at all this year.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Jets, I always find this interesting when a player does get released. They try to get some trades. They do not get anything for them. And all of a sudden, you look at what a bizarre world it is that a team is actually paying you to not play for them. And that's what the Jets are having to do.
I wish I had that go for me, right?
I know, right? It's like, hey, you know what?
They stopped paying me.
We don't want you to work for us, but yeah, we're gonna go ahead and pay you to not work for us. That's what we think of you. The culture thing, I think, is a very real issue that you bring up. And the only thing that I would say to that is I feel like there is a lot of people who will try to make the comparisons because they were both Steelers, Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. It's like, guys, we cannot put Le'Veon Bell in the same category as Antonio Brown when it comes to just off the field behavior. It was almost like once Antonio Brown left Pittsburgh, and we already saw signs of it in his last couple of years in Pittsburgh. Well, when he left Pittsburgh, I mean, he just turned into sorry for lack of a better term, a nut job. Like I literally think Antonio Brown needs help. I think there's a lot going on there. Le'Veon Bell, look, he held out. He did something that was extremely rare, and it didn't really work out, didn't really pay off for him as far as getting what he wanted to get out of it from Pittsburgh or anybody else. He did get a deal that I think was still very fair from the New York Jets. But you're right, sitting out that year, and according to a lot of people, not just in the Jets organization, said he kind of lost a step. And was it sitting out that year that now he's still playing catch up? Will he ever be the same? I don't really know. I do get the sense that he will not be coming in for any team, whoever does pick him up, as a guy that's going to be a priority running back. I think he's going to be a guy that you're going to use, in certain packages and certain series. But I think there are still teams that would say, hey, we already have our running back, but could we use this guy? Could this guy help us? Yeah, sure, possibly. And it's interesting you bring up teams that are maybe a little bit down on their luck. I was listening to Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated yesterday talking about it, and he brought up a team that I would kind of consider a little bit more on that lower tier, and that's the Miami Dolphins. And that could essentially be pick him up for the year, and then if you do get some type of production out of him, you start working on a long-term deal for him, because they have been in the running back market for a very long time. And now all of a sudden you get this, maybe what is considered a reclamation project, and you see what he can do. It's sort of a prove it type year for him with that organization. And all of a sudden you feel like if there is something there, then maybe you sign him to a bigger deal. Not really sure how that's going to work, but I'm with you on the culture part of it. But I was listening to some people say, like, well, it's like bringing Antonio Brown into your locker room. I don't agree with that. I just don't.
Yeah, and I think that Miami would be a good solution for him. I know he trains down there, what I heard,
Mhm.
and that's an up-and-coming team. So that'd be a good way to kind of take a risk on his end.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say about him before we get into these games here is, we also remember this is a team game, and you want players to go out there and make a living because it's a very short window to make your money. But there's an example, I believe, of a guy who kind of priced himself out of his market, and if he would have just kind of kept his mouth shut and played within the system, he'd have had more opportunities and probably would still be playing, still be doing very well, and probably make more money. So there is a lesson to be learned here, and that's, be the best you can for your team, and you're going to be rewarded, without putting yourself at unnecessary risk, of course.
Yeah.
But this is still a team game.
Well, and to your point too, look, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have been a very good flex player in fantasy football, right? I mean, hey, we would love to see people actually be considered a flex player in real life, but that's what he wanted to be paid. He wanted to be paid as a flex player because he was the second leading receiver a couple of years for the Pittsburgh Steelers next to Antonio Brown, on top of being the leading rusher. So yeah, he brings a lot of value as far as his yards and everything that he could do, but in the real world, you know what? You and I, we might draft high on a flex guy in fantasy football, but the NFL, it's not fantasy football. They're not going to pay you because, hey, you're putting up some really good fantasy numbers. And there was a time that I thought that's what he wanted to get paid because, hey, look at what I'm doing in fantasy football.
Yeah. Well, speaking of fantasy football, I finally lost last week. Just all my guys just had performed so well the first 4 weeks, they just decided to not perform all at once. And I got a dilemma this week because my top 3 running backs, who are three of the top 10 running backs, have buys. So I'm going to actually probably play an empty slot this week because I have a max of 4 running backs on my team, and I'm not going to drop Kamara, Jacobs, or Chris Carson just to play one player this week. So I might have to take a 2-week hiatus, with last week losing, and this week I'd have to play a player down. But I think it's worth it in the long run because those guys keep producing every week. It just happens they happen to be a bye this week. So I think I might have to take another loss.
Quarterbacks, by the way, I was talking to Matt Latufsky, Sporting News fantasy football writer. If you were somebody like me who had Dak Prescott in one of your teams, he is saying it's not a bad play to even consider Andy Dalton, Dak Prescott's replacement. I mean, if you are desperate for a quarterback, and I noticed in most leagues, Andy Dalton obviously is going to be available, but also if you're thinking, is this just going to be strictly a backup performance, or is this going to be a guy that could actually give me some value going forward? Andy Dalton is one to keep an eye on because of the offense, the system that they have in place, and the fact that Mike McCarthy likes to utilize veterans. We know Andy Dalton's been a long-time starter in the NFL, so that could be a pickup in fantasy football, just to throw that out there if you're like me and had Dak Prescott.
And they have a ton of weapons too. They really
Yes,
do.
They do.
I'm not saying that they're Dak Prescott, but they could see a similar result as far as production with Andy Dalton in there.
By the way, speaking of Dak Prescott, real quickly too, talk to our guy Travis Manners, physical therapist for Athletes Training Center, and so far it does sound like everything has gone good as far as that leg injury. And as you've seen, Chris, a friend of ours, Zach Miller, dealt with something similar. Alex Smith dealt with something with the infections, where all of a sudden you're not thinking about, are you going to be ready to play next year? You're thinking about, are you going to be able to keep your leg? Are you going to be able to live your life? I mean, Alex Smith's life was threatened. So those infections, when you have those compound fractures, can be a big deal. So far, it sounds like Dak Prescott has avoided any of those complications. So they're saying 4 to 6 months. That still sounds a little bit optimistic, but still, as long as he's avoiding those infections, that you don't have to hopefully worry about any type of issues where, God forbid, amputation is part of that. So that we could all at least, be very happy for Dak as far as just the early part of this recovery is going for his injury, which was just nasty.
Great news. Great news. Good to hear.
So in the NFL week number 6, we got some really good games. We got some games that are not so good, but when you kind of start out and you're looking at different ones to kind of pick at, I would start right now with a huge AFC North matchup between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. And, Chris, I'm just going to say the reason I find this one so intriguing, and Pittsburgh is at home, they are a home 3.5-point favorite, is I still feel like I need to validate Pittsburgh as a legitimate contender in the AFC, and I think this is a perfect game to do so because I like how they've looked. They're 4-0, but I've really liked what Cleveland has done. They have come on lately. They've taken some of the burden off of Baker Mayfield and have really utilized that running game, which I think has allowed Baker to be more effective as a quarterback. I feel like they are playing some dang good football, and that's not to say Pittsburgh isn't, but I still have some questions about Pittsburgh. Can they play a complete game where their offense is clicking just as well as their defense? And I think this could be that game to find out.
Yeah. This is an awesome game. I'm telling you, and I'm seeing 3 for Pittsburgh, -3. And if I'm seeing Pittsburgh at -3, I'm taking the Browns all day long. Right? If they took that from 3.5 down to 3, I love Cleveland in this game as an underdog. I'm taking them as my underdog of the week. This is a team that's won 4 games in a row, and they scored 30 points in each of those 4 games. Now, I'm not saying they're going to score 30 points against Pittsburgh, but I don't think they lose by more than 3 points if they do lose this game. This is a game that is honestly really – it's almost like a contender fight, right? This is to see who's going to get to match up with Baltimore.
Yeah.
Right. And Cleveland's already lost 1 game with Baltimore, but they're a different team now. And they're trying to, this is like a play-in fight here to try to get a chance at the champion. Cleveland, the toughest part about this game is that they're going to Pittsburgh. Again, not the home field advantage, but Pittsburgh's a home. But I like Cleveland in this game, especially at 3 points. At 3 points, I would bet Cleveland. They're my underdog of the week. We've been coming through with those. I like so much of what they're doing. I just don't trust Ben Roethlisberger yet. And another point I'd make about this game, especially with the Steelers, is they continue to find these new gems. Yeah. But I feel like that spreads it so thin, right? Like, where is their bell cow? Where's Juju Smith-Schuster? Where's Connor's been doing pretty good, but they find these new guys coming out with all these great weapons. And it's like, that's because someone else got shut down. And that's a good thing for them. I just don't believe that offense yet. They haven't been producing a whole lot. I got to see them come out. If they can beat a Cleveland team, I would probably have a much higher opinion of Pittsburgh. But Cleveland, for what they're doing right now, I think they're primed to go and have a great game against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I got to give Kevin Stefanski a lot of credit because after the first couple of weeks, I'm like, yeah, same old Cleveland, same old issues. Baker hasn't figured it out. And, honestly, they've really been able to right the ship here early on. And who knows? I mean, again, there's still so much season to be played. They could still go the other way, but I like what they were able to do starting off not looking so good. And again, that should be expected. Kevin Stefanski did not have a lot of one-on-one time, or at least in-person time with his team during this weird offseason. So I think those teams that do have new coaches, it's no wonder that if they did get off to a slow start, I think that was probably to be expected. I'm also going to give credit to a guy that I've never been a huge fan of too, and that is Baker Mayfield. Mm-hmm. Baker Mayfield, I thought, did a lot of running his mouth for doing very little in the NFL. I thought the chip on his shoulder almost seemed to be a little bit exaggerated on his part last year, and it just seemed like instead of actually producing on the field, he was picking fights with members of the media and I just thought less talk, more performance. And that was kind of his message to everybody in the offseason, that he was going to do a lot less talking and he was going to be doing a lot more kind of honing in on his craft and in the details and try to be a better quarterback. And so far that's, I think, really come out. And that's why I think Kevin Stefanski has been a good person for Baker Mayfield, where there is that nice balance of utilizing the running game, not making Baker Mayfield throw 40 to 50 times a game, leaning on that running game, letting the play action game be big. And I think it's really worked to Baker Mayfield's skill set. So we'll see if that continues. But yeah, if I had to pick right now, I like the way the Browns are playing. And it's not that I don't like the way the Steelers are playing. I just feel like the Browns are hot. I would go with the hot team right now. So I'm kind of there with you.
Yeah, and speaking of new coaches coming in and finally getting their feet in there and doing really well, how about Carolina, Chicago? Right, Carolina is favored in this game.
Yep.
Right, Carolina at 3-2 is favored. They've had 3 straight upsets, and Matt Rule is just doing a fabulous job down there without Christian McCaffrey. I mean, your Bears are 4-1, came up with a big win last week. Yeah, I don't know either way, because at 1.5 is what I'm seeing the line at now. I think that's about right. I wouldn't be surprised if either team wins this game. I mean, I think it's a pretty fascinating matchup to see Carolina and Teddy Bridgewater, who has really been throwing the ball down the field, going against a very kind of resurgent Chicago defense. The biggest difference in this game for me is going to be whether or not you see Foles, how he matches up with Carolina's very young but very overperforming defense.
Yep. Big news there for the Panthers. Now, if you remember last week when we were talking and we both said, yeah, Tampa Bay is going to win this one, reluctantly, for me, yeah, I still admitted that just because.
That's okay, man. If you lose that right there, in your heart, you win.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I don't mind being wrong. On that Friday, when Matt Nagy addressed the media, he was pissed off at the offense. And he has not really taken on that tone. And I don't know if that's lip service or what, but he was visibly upset about the attention to details that everybody seems to have on this offense, including the coaching staff. And remember, they had a little extra time to work on some stuff. And here's something out of Carolina that's going to be interesting to watch. I get the feeling that Matt Nagy really wants to pound the football as much as he can, at least in this game, at least, again, to sort of what we saw early the first couple of games of Chicago, running the football and really utilizing David Montgomery. K'Wan Short he's out for the year. He had season-ending surgery, and that is a huge part. That middle linebacker for Carolina is a stud. Yeah. And so could that work into the game plan that Chicago, I'm assuming, already wants to try to lean on, and that is somewhat of a running game. And we'll see. And also, keep in mind, Chicago did pick up Lamar Miller as a practice player a couple of weeks ago. Not sure if he'll be activated for this game, but without Tariq Cohen, they've had to use Cordero Patterson a little too much for my liking. But David Montgomery, could they maybe put in Lamar Miller? Might we see him? I don't know. So I think for Chicago, and you're right about the defense, I thought that they really stepped up after they got down 13-0 to Tampa Bay. They look like the defense that I think a lot of people thought that they would. So I think this is going to be a great game. I really do. I don't know. I would not bet it because I don't feel confident one way or another. But I think there are two teams that are feeling really good about themselves. But I think they also feel like they both have something to prove. And so I think that's kind of what that Panther-Bears game represents on Sunday.
Yeah, and who'd have thought that these two teams would be, kind of winning as much as they have been before the season. So good surprise on both sides.
The afternoon game that I think a lot of people are excited about, that is the Green Bay at Tampa Bay game. And look, again, like the Bears, the Bucs have a little extra time to kind of address the things that did not go right in that game, and for the Bucs that resulted in a loss. There was a lot of communication issues, and Tampa Bay, you got to start with the injuries. I mean, there's a lot of things that they're dealing with, but other teams are too. I am really curious to see. Now, it's one thing when you lose a season opener to the New Orleans Saints. It's another thing when you go on the road and you lose to a team that a lot of people had you at least as a 3 or 4 point favorite in that game, and you were up 13-0. So how does this Buccaneers team sort of respond to something like that? That's what I'm curious. And, of course, Green Bay coming off of the bye week, they've been one of the hottest teams in the NFL. This is going to be a really fascinating matchup. I think we're going to learn a lot about what Tampa Bay is all about.
Yeah, and I guess I'm a little surprised to see Green Bay only as a a 1-point favorite. I guess they're going down there. I thought Tampa Bay really, in all fairness, in that Bears game, they got some calls that went against them. That
Mhm.
could have helped them win that game, honestly. They actually looked really good, I thought, in a lot of games this year, but they're just it's mismatched. You know what I mean? And the line opened at this game with Tampa as a 2.5-point favorite, and it's gone all the way over to the other side, and now Green Bay as a 1-point favorite, which is basically a pick 'em
Yeah.
game. Um, I'm not gonna call this as a best bet or anything, but I like Green Bay in this game. I just until I see someone that can somewhat slow them down, why would you bet against them?
Yeah.
I mean, they are just a machine right now. They had some time off. I think Devontae Adams is going to come back this week, and given Aaron Rodgers more weapons out there can do nothing but help him. And you also have a defense, I think, that can play with Tampa Bay. They can do some things. The thing about Green Bay is what they've been able to do this year with the Smith brothers, with those guys up front. They have been able to get pass rush, and that Tom Brady does not like that. He does not
Yeah.
like guys in his feet. If someone touches him, he's just going to fold. It's probably a smart move being 43, but I mean, I'd have to go with Green Bay in this game, even at -1. I think that until someone stops them and proves they can stop them, I think they're probably one of the best teams in the NFL.
Yeah, and Tampa Bay, for the injury situation that they're dealing with, got worse when they did have to put Vita Vea on IR.
Ooh.
Jack Cichy is also on short-term IR. So you got some guys on what was a great, and it still is a very good defense, but
Mhm.
Vita Vea was, I mean, a stud up front. So losing him to the broken leg, that's a big blow for them. So a lot of those injuries had kind of been on their offensive side of the football. As they're starting to get guys back. And this could be the first week we see a full dose of Leonard Fournette. Remember, he was activated for the Bears game. He was in uniform, but they barely used him. This could be a week with extra time. He's been a full participant in practice all week. No visible ankle tape going on, too. So Leonard Fournette might be a big part of their offense. But, yeah, the defense finally got hit with a pretty big blow there with Vita Vea. So I'm
Yeah,
with you. I just like the way Green Bay is coming into this, even with the bye week that they had.
and I don't think Aaron Rodgers is all that. He's one of those quarterbacks that doesn't get affected a lot by the pass rush, right? So Shaq Barrett over there probably should get some rushes on him, but
Mhm.
the pre-Mahomes in Aaron Rodgers doesn't really go down a lot. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
he neutralizes a lot of pass rush. That's what a quarterback like him does. So I think that's a bad matchup. I think Green Bay wins this. I think they cover pretty easily.
A game on so Sunday night. This should have been a great game, and unfortunately, Bober, I don't think it's going to be a very good game. And that's the 49ers hosting the Rams. The Rams are just a 3.5-point favorite. This is a game that I love. The Rams. In fact, this would be my over of the week. Take the favorite and run with it because I think the Niners are a mess. Now, as I say that, this would be the perfect time for one of those games that we see every week where a team looks like they are completely lost and all of a sudden they just have a breakout performance. Unfortunately, I do not think the Rams are giving teams any opportunity to have a breakout performance. Their defense is playing at such a high level. The offense is consistent. Jared Goff looks a lot more calm. The offense looks a lot more stabilized than it did a year ago. Again, it comes down to I love where the Rams are going into this game as opposed to where the San Francisco 49ers are. They had Jimmy Garoppolo come back, start. That should be a great thing for this organization. You're starting to get healthy. He goes 7-17. Now he gets benched for C.J. Beathard. So there's just so much mystery on what's going on in San Francisco. The Rams are playing good football. Them being favored by 3.5, I think, is more than enough.
Yeah, a couple things about this. This is a very pivotal game for the Niners because if they lose this game, another division game, they're going the wrong way. And if they were to lose this game, they really put themselves in a tough spot, playoff wise, division wise, and whatnot. And I'm right with you with the Rams. I mean, honestly, they were a choice for me about going for my best bet. I stayed away from them a little bit because I don't like 3.5-point spreads. Typically, 3.5 points. If you can tease that down to 3, I'd like that a lot better. But 3.5 is just a little bit harder because a lot of games end on 3s. So anyway, I do like the Rams. I think it's a great pick by you. I like what they do. They're very consistent on how they do it, and the kind of offense they run is really kind of a mistake-free offense. They're going to try
Yeah.
to run outside zone. They're going to run play action and bootlegs off it. Their running backs, they have a trio of them now, and they're all playing well. They're they got a lot of guys. They've done well. And then
Yeah.
we kind of forget about the fact that probably the best player on the planet is playing defense for them in Aaron Donald, right? And he kind of comes through when you need him. And so I don't see how Niners match up with this game. The other thing about this, the Rams have 4 road trips in 5 weeks. So it's
Yep.
nice for them to be back on the West Coast. So I think they're going to be okay. It's a short trip to San Francisco. So I think the Rams are a good pick here.
Going back to some of the earlier games on Sunday, a game that is intriguing. And look, I liked Houston just because it seemed like they were there. There was some feeling of liberation there once Bill O'Brien got let go, and we saw them respond. They played good football last week. They got their first victory. I'm not trying to say, okay, all of a sudden look out for the Houston Texans, but I think you're just going to see better football out of Houston. They take on Tennessee, and my gosh, if you were watching what Tennessee did to a very good Buffalo team on Tuesday night, Chris, I was stunned because I just thought that layoff with what Tennessee was dealing with the outbreak and the COVID cases, being away for basically 2 weeks was going to be very taxing on them. They did not look like they missed a beat. In fact, gosh, dare I say they looked even better. Their defense was good. Their offense, I mean, we all saw the image of Derrick Henry just shoving Josh Norman to the ground, one of the better cornerbacks in the league. Like Tennessee looked like a pissed off team. And I think they have no problem covering this game and winning this game. But I do think this matchup with Houston is now going to be a little bit better than it would have been, say, 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I think that could be a sneaky good game. I would be shocked if Houston is able to stick around and make this thing competitive.
Yeah, but I got to tell you what, the world hasn't yet, in the lines and the bettors and the handicappers, I don't believe, have given Tennessee enough credit just yet. You know, they're an undefeated team, and they handled Buffalo. I mean, up front with their big guys, they handled them. They handled them with their skill positions. Tannenhill is a guy who makes very few mistakes. They have a game plan and a template for winning football that translates to all levels. And they don't even have, they're missing a couple of their best receivers too, right? To get Brown back and some of those guys. Tennessee, I am high on Tennessee. This is my best bet of the week. At 3, I'll take them all day long. I think they will handle Houston. I think it's a mismatch, quite honestly. And I think Tennessee, and I would not be surprised if Vrabel goes in there and says that they're not respecting us at only favor. He's not going to talk about betting lines in the locker room. But I think the narrative out there is that Tennessee's 4-0 and they just beat this team that was one of the hottest in the NFL, and they're still not being given respect. And I don't think Vegas is giving them respect. I think 3 points is kind of a slap in the face for Tennessee right now. I think they come out at Houston. And Houston's improved, I get that. But Tennessee is one of the more complete teams in the NFL right now. They really got a lot of great things going on. This is my best bet of the week. At 3 points, I'll take Tennessee all day long.
So we do have 2 Monday night games. We were going to have a Thursday night game. That has been moved to the other Monday night game, and that is the Bills and the Chiefs. So we just talked about the Bills getting manhandled by the Tennessee Titans. This is very similar to what I was kind of talking about with Tampa Bay. I want to see how a team responds after they're getting just kicked in the teeth or just losing a game that you probably shouldn't have lost. Tampa Bay, I just don't think should have lost to Chicago. So that's why I'm curious about how they respond against a good team. I'm really curious to see how the Bills, I mean, they just got thoroughly dominated. The headlines, the narrative around this Bills team was all positive. I've been a big part of that. I like what the Bills are, and I still do. I'm not going to let one game say, okay, now they're a bunch of frauds. But I do think this is going to be a pivotal game. And I'm not saying they have to come out and beat the Kansas City Chiefs, but they have to make this thing competitive. If they are to be believed as one of the teams that could battle Kansas City or Baltimore or whoever else we want to consider, even Tennessee, as one of the better teams in the AFC, they've got to show up Monday night. And Kansas City coming off of that loss, they're going to be fired up too. So I don't think this is a great situation Buffalo's coming into, but you cannot make an excuse. You have to be able to show that you belong on the same field with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I think this is probably as even of a matchup as we could have got, having Kansas City, who only lost by 8, but really the second half of that game, they got kind of pushed around. Yeah. And then Buffalo, who basically the same thing happened. The interesting thing about this is how both these teams are going to respond to losing. They're both very equally matched. I think the injuries and people that are playing or not playing is going to be a big factor in this game. On the Kansas City side, they lost Osemele, who I think their Remmers coming in is going to be fine, but I think it's going to affect their run game a little right? Because Osemele was such an explosive run blocker. I think the sausage, the fullback, he looks like he's not going to play this week. They do a lot of packages with them, and that could affect them too. But I want to really see if Tre'Davious White is going to be playing for Buffalo. I thought Tennessee took a great advantage of that secondary with him not being in there. A lot of matchup problems for them on that, and they're going to face a similar thing. In fact, a way more skilled receiver core with the Chiefs. If White isn't playing, I think that is a huge advantage for Kansas City because even though they don't have Watkins, they have guys behind him who are speedsters, and they'll have some time here. Buffalo has one less day to prepare, a little bit of a hangover, and then I'll also probably take Andy Reid coming off a loss way more than McDermott. Just a guy who doesn't lose a lot of games, and when they do lose, they usually come back and win. So I think 3.5 is a very tough line to bet. I don't think I'd bet it because I stay away from that. But I'm betting my Chiefs here. I wouldn't put a best bet on them, but I think they come out and I think hopefully they win this game. They might win by about 3 points, but hopefully Kansas City can come through. They do have to go to Buffalo, but again, there's no crowd.
It's a 5 o'clock out there, but 4 o'clock game here, so that'll be.
Yeah, but you got to get on the road and go do that. That's
right.
There is an advantage to sleeping in your own bed. I mean, and being in your own stadium, but not that big of an advantage without a crowd.
Yeah. The other Monday night game, this again is going to be really interesting. You got the Cardinals and the Cowboys. Who knows? I mean, Andy Dalton will be making his first start. The Cardinals have been hot and cold. They bounced back after a couple losses, but they did that against the Jets. Maybe that was the perfect recipe to get them going on the right track again. The Cardinals are – that's probably right, just for the simple fact that we don't know how the Cowboys are going to respond with Andy Dalton, as a starter. I think that could be a good situation for the Cowboys, better than what the alternative could be if you had a different backup. But look, I just don't know what to make of the Cardinals. I think there's talent. I think they're better than they were last year, but I feel like there's sort of an every week you have to kind of sort of brace yourself and see what they're going to be.
And Arizona came back last week and had a good game, but it was against the Jets. So I don't know how real it was. Right. Ultimately, this is, I don't have any way to predict what's going to happen here. I like Dallas here, but I just don't know how Arizona, they very well could put up big numbers with Kyler Murray. But the one thing worth noting here is this is Arizona's third straight road trip. So they could be a little weary out there having to travel around so much. But, I'd stay away from betting this one. I just don't know how to predict this one.
Some games that we probably don't need to spend much time on, too. Let's look at Bengals, Colts. Colts need a win in the worst way. Bengals, they put up a fight. Joe Burrow puts up a fight, but, look at the Colts, 7.5-point favorite in that one.
Mm-hmm.
That probably seems right. It is for a team that I still think is offensively challenged a little bit, but I think the Colts realize they can't mess around. This Bengals defense is just not very good. I think that's a lot of points. I wouldn't touch it, but I expect the Colts to win and probably win by 10. I wouldn't be shocked if Cincinnati's hanging around, but I don't trust the Bengals defense in this one either.
Yeah, and the only thing I like in this game is the under, honestly, because Indianapolis does play a great brand of defense, and Cincinnati is not very explosive. And Indianapolis as an offense isn't super explosive either. So at 46.5, if I get that, I'd probably the under is the only bet I'd look at in this game.
Another one, probably the game between the most disappointing teams this year that we thought might be a lot better, the Vikings and the Falcons. I'm not seeing a line on this one right now. That's a noon game on Sunday that is in Minneapolis. And again, the Falcons, we don't know. The Falcons may have to punt on this one because of the positive tests right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if you're seeing a line, if that line gets removed until they figure out what's going on with the Atlanta Falcons team. But Falcons, Vikings, I'd take the Vikings with maybe 3 points or less in this one.
Yeah, I saw it teased up to 4. Again, a game of two teams that probably have played themselves out of contention, but Minnesota at least has a lot more positives going than Atlanta.
Broncos, Patriots. Again, sounds like Cam Newton's going to be back. I think that's good for the Patriots. The Broncos have really kind of struggled, especially the quarterback position and the injuries. Last I saw, the Patriots are a 9.5-point favorite in this one. That's a lot against a team that still does play some defense. I would not take the Patriots and the points in this one. I'm not saying this is going to be my underdog pick, but I think 9.5, at least for me, is a little too rich for my blood.
Yeah, and I think this might give an opportunity for Drew Lock to come back and play in this game, but also Cam Newton's coming back too. So
Yeah.
the New England Patriots are not yet who they're going to be by the end of the year, given Bill Belichick's history. But Denver bringing Drew Lock back might give them a spark too. Yeah, 10's a big line. I got 10 here. It's a big line. I wouldn't touch it, but it might be worth watching this game a little bit to see how the quarterbacks play.
Your New York Giants and the Washington football team. Giants a 2.5-point favorite. Yeah, I'm okay with the Giants. I think they've been competitive. They dang near pulled that off against Dallas last week. Look, this is a bad division. It just is. But I think anything can happen. But I think the Giants seem like they're the better team even without Saquon Barkley.
Well, the Giants. I mean, I would love to see them get their first win. And this might be the only game all year long that they're favored. I think it's a benefit actually for Washington that Haskins is out. I think they're going to put Kyle Allen back in there. So hopefully this is a competitive game. Hopefully the Giants figure out a way to win this game. Again, I don't know if I take even 2.5 or 3 points. Maybe winning by 1 with a field goal in the last seconds. Maybe the Giants can actually score in the fourth quarter and win. If this game's on TV, I'm going to watch it for my Giants, but it's kind of a snooze fest otherwise.
Ravens, Eagles, Baltimore is on the road. And I did hear Philadelphia is letting some fans in, but not a lot. I think like 500 fans in. The Ravens are a 7.5-point favorite. I love Baltimore in this one. The Eagles, to me, this is a team that's been struggling offensively. I think the Ravens defense is going to give them a lot of problems. So yeah, I'd have no problem taking Ravens in the points.
Yeah, the only thing about this is the Eagles are pretty desperate, right? And this is I don't think they're as bad as their record is, honestly. And I'm waiting for them to finally step up and play. I have major concerns about Carson Wentz now, who just does not seem to be able to get over the hump in terms of his mechanics, his techniques. He's gritty, but he's not playing nearly up to what his contract says he is. So that's been the biggest difference for them. And Baltimore, I mean, they might just get bored. You know what I mean? They beat up on Cincinnati last week. I don't think Lamar Jackson even played the second half because he's on my fantasy team and didn't do anything. I'd stay away from this one, but I don't know. We'll see which team shows up, which Philadelphia team shows up, quite honestly.
The Toilet Bowl, the Jags and the Lions combined 2-7 in this one. You've got the Detroit Lions are the road team, and they are the favorite of 3 points over the Jaguars. I mean, does it really matter?
You know, I have heard, in all honesty, I have heard if you get this line, what's this line at now?
I got it at 3, Detroit -3.
Yeah, 3. You know, if you get it at 3, maybe if you can get it under that, Jacksonville seems to be the pick, honestly. And all the stuff I've looked at, they like Jacksonville better than Detroit. I don't know how you qualify a horrible team versus a other horrible team. But these are two teams that, you know, I don't know what they're, you know, both their coaches are probably going to be gone. They're going to have major redos, and it's only week 6. So not a great game. And these games to me are just wildly unpredictable. So I wouldn't be able to lean on either one of them.
All right, the last one, and this is going to be crazy because it's going to be my underdog one. The Jets and the Dolphins. Now, it's not because I'm going to take the Jets to win this football game, but I do think that they can cover what I'm seeing as a 9.5-point Miami spread. Look, Miami has played better football. I understand that, but I still don't think that they are worthy of a 9.5-point spread as far as being favored. I get it. The Jets are a bad football team. So my little upset pick, or at least taking the underdog, I'm going to take the Jets laying the 9.5 points against the Dolphins. I know it sounds crazy because the Jets are god-awful, but I don't think the Dolphins are as good as their score against the Niners showed last week. I just think that was kind of a perfect storm for them. I think the Jets will be sporty in this one. They'll be competitive in this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Jets are that's a bold pick, my friend.
That is.
But I will say that Miami is again wildly unpredictable. They had an awesome week last week, and I would not be surprised if there was a letdown today or this week for them, because they're just not they're ascending, but they're learning how to win. And one of the things about being a winning team is you have to learn how to come back after a win. So many times you see the emotion of it just take them to a certain place, and then they just kind of fall back out of it. So I wouldn't touch it, but that's your underdog of the week. And it looks like I'm thinking my best bet is Tennessee, and my underdog is Cleveland, and your best bet is the LA Rams, and your underdog is the Jets. So
yeah, I know.
We've had a pretty good run here, honestly, of all of our stuff coming in. And while I will make a slight disclosure here is that we are not guaranteed that these bets are going to win. Hopefully you take our insight and make your own decision. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-BETS-OFF. But this is kind of fun to kind of go down the gaming aspect of this and have a little fun with it.
Well, it's legal in a lot of states now. So, hey, you got to
someday we'll get it here, right?
Right. Yeah. Get out there and vote. Okay. Be sure to do that.
Yeah. The first step comes up soon. So good stuff, man. Good. A lot of stinkers in this week, but there's also a lot of good games too.
And no Thursday night football, so enjoy your Thursday night off or watch some Major League Baseball postseason because you get 2 Monday night football games again. So that'll be fun. So, yeah, enjoy the weekend, the high school football and everything, Bober. We'll talk to you here very soon.
We got to have a better week, man. My teams need to win this week. Chiefs, Giants, Elkhorn Antlers. They all lost last week. Let's get some wins this week.
I'm going to root for the Elkhorn Antlers at least.
There you go. All right, buddy. We'll see you next time.
See ya.